All right. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Hopefully everything should be all good and all set up. Looks good to me, audio-wise. Hello, Subject Ultra. Welcome to the stream. Working on your collaboration. It's interesting to have the person that you're collaborating with in the stream chat of your YouTube livestream. Anyway, let's begin. Should I play the whole thing? I don't think... Yeah, I think I will play maybe up until like here-ish, because this last part is definitely not finished. Generally speaking, we need a few more one-shots, I guess. Maybe one or two main elements towards the end here in terms of like sequences and stuff like that. But the idea is getting pretty like rounded, I would say. Of course, all of the details still need to be figured out and stuff like that. But at least this is what we have. Mind B, welcome. How are you doing? Festival was very good. I'll talk about that a little bit later when there's a few more people on the stream, because I think most people are interested in that. Davey and Lucas, welcome to the stream. A lot of the sounds that you're hearing now are going to be shorts soon. One of the things that I do now is record sounds made from scratch when I'm recording shorts. Maybe you've seen it. And I did that in this project over here. A lot of the shorts that still have to come out. It's a little bit more interesting, I think, and it also helps me progress the track while I'm recording. So it's a win-win. It just takes a little bit longer to record and edit, and sometimes the edit is a little bit more difficult because I end up with more footage than I wanted. I can do this, by the way, it looks cool.
Serenity is when you wake up in the morning, free of worry, free of trouble, free of any type of anguish.
Nice track, thank you. Maybe a bit of a strange synth, that one. Should probably take a look at that. Really like the sounds and synths. Thank you. Some more sounds that are made when I was recording shorts. Stuff like that. From this point on, the track still has like some grid synths and stuff like that in there. I guess I can play a little bit of this as well. But obviously, as you can hear, there's a lot lacking in this part of the track. I still want to focus maybe a little bit on some... Hello, there we are. On some of the details in the earlier parts of the track. That way, the person that I'm collaborating with, Subject Ultra, on this track, who is also in the chat here, or at least was at the beginning of the stream, they have also some space that they can actually fill themselves a little bit. Like, of course, there's some stuff happening already in here, but this still needs like a main idea, like a main sequence. In the same way that we have that over here and over here even. And to a certain extent, maybe even here. I would maybe want to leave this part over here for them to build like on top of. So I'm just going to focus on the like details of this part over here. Sorry, it has been a while since I last streamed. Of course, last Sunday I wasn't there because I was at Burning Mountain, which was a lot of fun. Hello, Sophist. Hello, Glyph. Welcome, welcome. When it comes to like the Burning Mountain stuff, last year I really went with the idea that I was going to turn it into a video. Right? I did the review video and stuff like that. And this year I really went with the mentality that I did not want to do that. That I wanted to basically record as little as possible. I have some recordings, of course, on my phone. Every time there was like a very cool track playing or something like that, I would record it. I also have like a bunch of pictures that I shared with a couple of people, but that is like mainly just the memories and some private pictures I needed to share. I did not go with my camera like I did last year, the camera that you guys are looking at me through. I also did not like... Last year I really went with the idea, as I said, to make a video, so I needed like 10 minutes at least of footage that was good of the festival and of the different things that I was talking about, so I was constantly filming stuff. And this year I just did not want to do that. So for that reason, I decided not to film as much. Maybe I'll have like 5 minutes of like little clips and stuff like that. Plus one longer recording of 4 minutes of the ceremony that they did on a Saturday, where they burn the big Burning Mountain statue that they make out of wood. It's very interesting. It looks very cool. I think this was the synth that I had a few doubts over. Yeah. Of course, if you guys have questions about the festival or want me to talk about anything in specific, feel free to ask. This is a chatting stream after all. I think this sound, I'm just going to turn it off here. I think we have enough sounds in here in terms of how full it is. We don't actually need like a one shot over here. So to be honest, I'm just going to delete this one because I don't feel like this one is going to end up in any of my material. So might as well remove that. What I wanted to do was that over here. I guess I was disconnected for a bit. Anyway, I was working on these snare things over here. This is just like a snare riser, which is very short. You guys probably have heard me use this before because I like to use it basically everywhere in my tracks, because it adds a nice emphasis on the beat that happens after it. That's cool, but I would like to have an extra background pad in here that sits well with this. And that morphs also from the vocal into this pad sound that plays for a little while towards the end here. We go A to Z and then we just click one of these for now, and then we'll find the better one, or the one that fits there later. I first want to determine the key here. I want something really soft, really dark for this vocal to sit on top of. Maybe like that with a sub bass below it. I'll just quickly make like a breeze bass thingy. Like that maybe. Just like a nice warm, stable bass note over here. And then this a little bit lower again. I feel like maybe towards the end here. Yeah, this sound doesn't really feel like it sits in here nicely. Maybe just without it, it would be better. like that. I just want this to come in a little bit later. There's a cool reverse delay thing that I have. Cool. I made an art, but I'm not sure if it fits. We could do a couple of things with that in terms of like how you want to check different things. I believe you have the export that I sent you last night, did I? Yes. That should be I send the meeting in Discord. Okay. Let me put it in there. If you have like sounds and stuff like that and you want to check how it works in the track, what I was trying to say maybe is you can take the export that I have and just put it into a project of yours. And it should be at the same volume as it is in my project because I don't think I normalized it when exporting. Yeah, no. Normalization is off. So you could, if you want to check if sounds properly fit in the track or something like that, you could try doing that. If you have like a sound, you can just put it in the DAW to see. Anyway, let me just quickly make a folder for it. And then current project here. Let me just place it in an empty part, I guess, so that we can hear what's going on. Does it need a special kind of element, or? I mean, it does need a better sound than that, but maybe this will work. Let me just put that in the sequences here. Okay. Maybe sound like this. I mean, sound-wise, it's not exactly what I would go for here, but the melody itself, I don't see anything wrong with that. That can work. Let's see if there's like a cool Omnisphere patch in here that can use it. Hello, Dada. Welcome to the stream. Like there's plugs in here, I think. Is a bit mild for there. That one doesn't really have a good way of opening up. In another vid, I heard you saying you don't process in EQ, mainly your kicks. Why, bro? I EQ a lot and process them as well, and there's a huge difference between the original one and the processed. Yeah, but usually speaking, those things can be achieved with the plugin itself. So kick drum can basically make any shape of kick drum that you want, right? So I just make a good kick drum in here, and that way I don't have a lot of processing. There's like a little bit of EQ over here, and then this is all turned off. This is for transitions. I guess there's a little bit of processing on here. This is for transitions, this is for transitions, and this is for transitions, and this is for transitions. So the actual processing that I have is 2 EQs and a sidechain compressor, or a Shadow Hills compressor. And normally I don't even use the Shadow Hills one. And that's it. There's nothing on kick drum itself. Like the Shadow Hills compressor, I don't really use this on kick drums. This is the first time that I tried it out, just to see what it would do. When it comes to all of the processing, the main thing I want to avoid is altering the length of my kick drum, which you're probably doing, seeing the way that you speak about the processing. But if I just look at my kick over here, you can see that it doesn't become longer than half the beat, right? Like there's a little bit over here that technically is like not 0 dB or not very close to 0 dB, but that's everywhere, right? It's like minus 50, minus 80 somewhere, and then here it's minus 40. Okay, that doesn't really matter. The main thing that you want to avoid is your kick drum, like actual oscillation going into here and disturbing anything. Like for example the bass, which needs to play there. So if I play this with the bass line, and we check where the bass line is on, you can see here we have the first note of the bass, which is always going to be lower, and then these two notes should have full space to play on their own. So together you can see that the kick is giving full space to the bass notes over here, and therefore we get no issues here over here with the summing of the two. Also notice that we get no issues over here with the summing, because we stop the bass line from playing into this part over here, at least for the most part. So when it comes to why I don't do processing on my kick drum, first of all, I try to see, okay, what can I achieve with processing? Like, what does a compressor actually do for me? Oh, it flattens the kick drum. Why don't I just do that in the plugin? If there's not a good reason for me to do it inside of the plugin, then I, generally speaking, don't do it in the plugin. As I said before, I do have a Shadow Hills compressor on here, and this is just sometimes I experiment a little bit. And of course, some EQing is always something that you need to do to adapt the kick drum to the track. And in this case, the reason why I'm not doing that inside the plugin, even though this plugin has an EQ in here, is because this kick drum is already also rendered out and placed in other parts, and I would need to replace that then, which is a bit of a hassle. And with this amount of EQing, the phase shift is, as we saw before, not going to be so drastic that it's going to shift into the part where the bass line plays. Hope that answers your question. This fill over here is, I think, one that I wanted to do something with. Right? Oh no, here. We have the claps in here, but I think I may also want to have a drum fill here. Although now with the bass it sounds a lot nicer just going into it like that. Dark Ableton Live. Yes, this, for anybody wondering, this skin is the look and feel Artful Dark Plus skin with these settings. Full brightness, by the way. If I set the brightness back to normal, you guys don't see anything. And I don't even see anything then. It mainly changes the colors if you do that. It's so dark it doesn't even change the actual thing that you have over here. I do think a little drum fill towards the end here would be nice, though. So let's find that. Are there fills in here that I like? I guess this one will work. But it's one that I use constantly, so I might want to not have too much of these throughout all of my tracks. I do really like it though. Sounds good. How can you see I've gotten used to it now? I think I have 50% of my audience who really hates my skin and wants nothing to do with it, and the other 50% of my audience really loves it and wants it and uses it because of me. At least that is what it sometimes feels like in the comments when I get comments related towards the skin. Either people love it or people hate it. To be honest, I really love it. I really like having such a dark vibe to my workspace. I have it with all of the programs that I use. I have it with my Discord. I have it with my Premiere Pro. I have it, I guess, even to an extent with this program over here. The sides of it. Yeah, except the workspace itself, of course. The rest of this program also has like a very dark mode. And this is the stuff that I use for the thumbnails. So anything that I need to work in for a long time, all of those programs have like a very dark mode to them, which I really like. Also, all of the web pages that I go on, the YouTube Studio for channels and stuff like that. Right now, the YouTube live streaming thing that I have open as well. Same with everything. You're not going to please everyone. Yeah, exactly. The point is of that wasn't really to say like I'm trying to please everyone. I just realized that some people may not like it and some people may really like it. And at the end of the day, I think it is a good idea to have maybe a bit of a different skin from what people are used to. Maybe it's a little bit harder to understand the tutorials, but I don't explain tutorials in a way that you necessarily just follow them, just follow along with them. It's more like it gives my videos maybe a bit more of a unique identity. A good kick rarely needs processing, at least in sidevents. Yeah, exactly. Since we basically are able to make the kick drum in the plugin, either this or Kick2 or Bassism or Serum or whatever you use to make your kick drums, you're almost always able to get the amplitude and pitch shape that you want, and in this case also the EQing that you want, which is the same as the amplitude, by the way. If you're doing EQing, you could theoretically also get the same kick by just changing the amplitude curve around. Same with compression, obviously, because compression is just changing the amplitude over time. You could all manually do that. It is a question if you can get better results by doing it with an EQ or with a compressor or with any other processing that you use on it. It's always the point, like, can I get this kick to sound better? And what are the negative consequences of them? Sometimes unforeseen. Because a lot of people that say, like, I need to do a lot of processing on my kick and my bass, and I need to do a lot of processing on my kick, or with the bass it's a little bit more standard to do the processing on there, but if you find yourself needing 10 plugins to get a bass sound that sounds good to you, it's probably not going to work. It's probably going to translate very, very poorly to other systems, and that again has to do with just the space that we talked about before inside of SciScope, where you want your kick to cut off at some point. So you need to keep that part in control. And a lot of processors that you use tend to extend the signals that they're working with, which is something that a lot of people don't actually realize. I do want this to be maybe a bit more stereo. Because this also opens up to the sides. So it would be nice to kind of open up before we go into this part over here. Which is a lot more stereo because it doesn't have a kick and bass, of course. That works. I like that. Maybe one more thing in here could be a cool reverse crash. I should already have, yes, a reverse crash here. Yeah, that really finishes it, doesn't it? Listen to that difference. It doesn't really sound that big now, but if you kind of like flow into it correctly with a crash like this, just like a very small detail element, listen to the difference that it can make. Is this an original mix? Yes. It is a collaboration between me and Subject Ultra, so if I go through here, you'll probably find places where there's like names for things that I don't have, like the silent and stuff like that. So that may look like a remix. This stuff as well, right? That may look like it's rendered out from another project that I'm remixing. But that is because it's a collaboration and he sent me the stems for his project that I then imported in here and started working on. But it is original music. It is not a remix. To be honest, I don't think I've talked about this on stream, but when it comes to remixes, 99% of the time when I see or when I hear about like remixes, I tend to think like, oh, this is one person, which is a small artist, remixing a very big artist and trying to, through that big artist, prop up their name. Which, by the way, isn't legal. You cannot just take a big artist track and remix it or bootleg it however you want. That's illegal to do. That would be copyright infringement. But that aside, when it comes to remixes, my personal philosophy for accepting a remix of a track is I need to be able to really add something to the musical idea. I never want to find myself being accused by other people of saying like he is doing a remix because it's easy views and stuff like that. It's like that can happen, and I'm, I guess, a little bit scared of that. But I also don't want, to be honest, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to say take a track by Asterix, Deep Jungle Walk, put a offbeat kick and bass under it, and call it a remix, and then publish that. There's not really like any benefit to what I'm doing for that, I think. Dish to Gino, welcome to the stream. Getting some hiccups here. That's annoying. Usually happens when you're about to start recording or live streaming. Yeah, but remixes, when it comes to remixes, I personally don't do a lot of them. I might do more in the future. Who knows? But whenever I get approached by somebody like, hey, do you want to remix this? I have to think about it, and I have to really say to myself, like, you have something to add to this. You have something that you can improve in this musical idea, I guess, is the way I would say it. I also don't want my remixes to sound too similar to the original track. When I'm working on a remix, I ideally want to change the bass line, like to a different concept, and change the structure around of the track, and just see if I can take their musical core idea and really push it into somewhere else, as opposed to what you often hear is that like one remix just sounds very much like the original. Like it's the original, but with a few sounds here or there. I don't really want to do that. I want to basically go the opposite route with my material to see if I can write some cool stuff out of that. And usually that works. But it means that a lot of tracks, I either like I get approached by somebody asking me, "Hey, do you want to remix this?" And I'm like, I cannot really add anything to this. Or people say, "Hey, you should remix this track," or "You should remix that track," and I don't get officially approached. Then I cannot do it because of legal issues. You know, it's technically copyright infringement if you just take somebody's work and remix it without their permission. Some remixes are better than the original, especially if it's in a different genre. Yes, but most remixes are worse than the original. From what I've heard. Especially when it comes to that, the main reason why I say that is because the internet is scattered with cheap remixes of pop songs with a simple EDM beat under them that they put up there as soon as the original track gets out so that they can ride the view wave of the original track. So maybe a part of what remixes are for me, like mentally, is tainted with that idea. Is maybe a good way of saying that. What if we don't announce this thing here? Instead, we announce this thing over here. I like it, but the last sound of this, the kind of sound in here. I think I like that a bit more, just in terms of tonality. Does this have any automations on there that I need to be aware of? It doesn't seem like it. I did turn on the automation lock again, but I didn't have that on when I copied it over. So I was a little bit scared that it may have destroyed some automations or stuff like that. I guess we'll have to check from here how it goes in. A little bit on the loud side, this sound here. Sounds good. I like it. I like the way that that flows. Are you used to working with 100 plus tracks in a track? Yes, it's the default. None of my productions have less than 100 sounds in them anymore. It just takes a lot of different sounds to nowadays create a track of mine. But I like it. I don't mind using a few extra tracks. My CPU can handle it. I can handle it workflow-wise. I export everything for mixing and then re-import it into Reaper to finalize the mixes of all of my tracks, which is a process that takes a long time. But that's one of the reasons why I like to do it, is because that way I force myself to look at each individual element once again and what it needs to do in the mix while I keep adding them to that new project. And that means that at the end of the day, I don't have to go through this production and try to like remember what everything is. Like when you look at this, right, it's not really named in any way. It's not really clear what is happening on every track. And if you're working every day on a project from start to finish, that's not really a problem. But I work on 10 different projects, meaning that at some point there's going to be projects of mine where I forget a bunch of sounds that exist, or I forget maybe like a small detail of it, maybe removing some low frequencies that need to be removed. So having that extra check in place allows me to get to all of that stuff. Also with feedback tails that run out of control, like delay tails, I mean, or reverbs that run out of control, stuff like that. You tend to catch that in the mixing stage as well. So I have basically developed my workflow nowadays around having so many tracks in my project. How do you not get lost in mixing? Do you follow any brainstorm/mind map to keep the context coherent? I don't have like a specific thing that I can show you, I guess. When it comes to the writing part, I just write, right? Whatever comes to mind, it just flows out of me, and I write down the music that I want to write. Once I decide, like, okay, this track is like close to finalized, I just need to work on the details. That is the point where I start writing stuff down. I have many different notes, but I think I may have some track notes in here. Let me see if we can give you an example of the stuff. Yes, here. So here you can see we have like a small list. It says like intro impact. You can see one of the things that isn't crossed is drum fill. You might be able to read that. But basically I just write down like small notes like that, which means that, okay, these are all of the details that you still have to go through and all of the things that you have to do and stuff like that in the track. And once that is done, I export for mixing, and then it goes into Reaper, into the mixing project. So Reaper looks somewhat like this. Takes a little while to open because this is a finalized project, so it has a lot of plugins in there. So this is a final project. As you can see, this is finished mixing. You can see all of automations and stuff like that. And what you'll find is that I use the same organizational structure. And at this point, everything is named. So I name right before I export to mixing. Within all of these tracks over here, I just name these tracks. And then when it exports, it gets this track name in the file that it exports to. So that when I open everything up inside of Reaper, I actually have named tracks, which is really useful because then, of course, I can organize it and I can easily remember what needs to happen where. And this is by no means like a big project here. You can see 139 tracks. I've done tracks that are triple the size in terms of projects. I've done one that was maybe at the end over here, it said maybe 350 tracks, maybe. Something like that. I like the idea of separating the time specifically producing, then you export to another DAW for mixing. Yeah, that's really a mindset thing. So that I have one mindset that is purely production, purely writing, which is this stuff over here. And then I just immediately go out of the mindset. And then once I import it into Reaper, it's a whole new workflow. So my mind kind of moves into the mixing mindset as well. It takes a lot more time, but it does have benefits in that I think the music comes out better in the end. because it forces me to basically reevaluate every decision, in the sense that I need to reset or I normalize all of the volumes when I export of all of the individual elements that I export, and I export every element as its individual thing. So, of course, this track isn't used. This is the kick from the old production that Subject Ultra sent me. But my new kick gets its own track, and then any kick fills that I'm doing also get their own track in the mixing project as they do in the production project. So all of those things get normalized, meaning that I have to balance everything against everything again when I import for mixing. Looks like an interesting approach. When it comes to it, at the end of the day, it's basically the professional approach. If you think about it, if you think about like how a pop production is made, there's somebody in a recording studio that records the singer and the band, or they do the production, they make the beat. Maybe even there's somebody that is separately making the beat and they're bringing in the beat and then they have to record on top of it. But there's basically one studio that does the production. And then usually what happens is it gets shipped off to a different mixing engineer that then does the mixing of the track. Those tend to be different people. The producer and the mixer. As far as I know, most of the time a mixing engineer does not do your production for you. Or your recording. Right? And the same is true for mastering. With the mastering, it gets sent to a mastering engineer that then does the mastering. So it's basically that approach, but within one studio done by one person. Instead of like actually having different minds do different stages of the process, it's just for me to shift into different mindsets for different stages of the process. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, by the way. Oh yes, I got your POV now. Okay, that means that I did explain it well. Cool. Do we want some more stuff over here too? Maybe this is not the right spot for it. Maybe we want this over here. Did I do something wrong here? Did I place it? I placed it on the wrong track here. I like that vibe. I do think we should have a little bit more of a rise up into the fill here. So maybe an actual riser in here would be nice. Did I make an MIDI track? That's not what I want. I guess still I'm confused about having tried Bitwig where it's exactly the other way around with the shortcuts. Maybe this on the offbeat is a bit strange. I don't know if I like this. This pack over here, the Psytrance Intelligence, is sometimes where I get some of my risers from. Nowadays I don't really use it that much other than the effects in here. I used to use it a lot more. I guess some of the hi-hats and stuff like that I still use. But I used to use it also for the kicks and stuff like that. I no longer use it for that. Both of these packs are great though, in just like general sample packs that have a little bit of everything. Sorry for randomly talking in Portuguese again in the chat. Yeah, I did try to ignore it, but it's fine. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, people want to communicate, and they'll try to do that in their own language. It feels... It is late. Ah! It is late. Why? Yes, I'm lazy with risers, although it's easy to make, but in my honest opinion, it's just used so often and nobody really would care if there's a sample rise, I guess. I mean, risers are background sounds. I don't think you should spend your time sound designing the background sounds given how many sounds are already in your average Psytrance track, right? Like if you truly want to do like a special riser, which I do from time to time as well, like over here, there's maybe one or two more MIDI things in here somewhere that I may have rendered out, or stuff like that. I don't know. This is audio, as you can see over here. It doesn't have a name, but that doesn't make it a MIDI clip, because sometimes I remove them for thumbnails and whatnot. Anyway, when it comes to like risers and stuff, I don't like to think about it as a main element. When it comes to their function, they should be in the background and the musical idea should be on top. So when it comes to these detail sounds, for me personally, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to sound design them like from scratch. It's much better to just drag in a sample and work with that, because then it's faster and you can get to the stuff that actually matters, which is what's happening in one-shots, synths, basses, and parts of the drums. And I guess vocals as well, and maybe a little bit of atmospheres and pads, but this is also background sounds, and you'll find me most of the time also not really sound designing these, but just opening up Omnisphere patches. Although there are some exceptions, as you can see. And they all sound more or less the same anyway. Yeah, but the same is true with FM synths. It does matter which riser you use. Like you can see, if I go in here, I guess in here is the best. You can see I have some risers in here, I have some sweeps, I have a lot of other effects. These are just my main effects, but I often find myself going through these, which are big groups of these, right? Like big sample packs of these, because I don't find exactly the one that I want. So finding the right texture to your riser and the right way that it's rising up or slowing down or whatever it's doing is very important. So I wouldn't agree with calling them all just like the same. I just think that when it comes to workflow, this is not the part where you should be spending like actually time designing the sound unless you have something really specific in mind for the effect. A little bit of particle texture over here would be cool. I've been experimenting a lot recently with doing particles in Vital. Maybe like this would be a good idea, just a phase disperse FM setup. Maybe like this. Oh, this doesn't go through, and then that might work. That's an octave too low. Yeah, generally speaking, you just need like a basic sound like this. Something that has a lot of texture and a lot of change to it. Maybe let's give it some effects in here as well. Something like that is cool. And then I go into Lunacy Beam over here. Plugin that I recently featured on my channel. And this is a really cool ambience plugin because it does both delay and reverb at the same time. So there's some really cool like particle spray presets in here. Can probably get some really cool glittery textures out of this kind of stuff. Wait, I didn't know that Dash made presets for this thing. That's interesting. I suddenly just see Dash Glitch's name in here. I didn't know he made this. How many did he make? Lunacy. Is there... Oh, I lost the thing. I did like his preset. I'm probably going to keep that. Is there a way I can search for just a simple author thing? You cannot find per author all of their presets. Or can you? It does seem to have a lot in here, actually. To be honest, I'd never noticed this. I even made a video on this where I went through a lot of the presets. But this is cool. I haven't seen you talking about or using those big monitors you bought some time ago, sir. Are you still not using them? You're still not using them? That's phrased a little bit strangely, but I am using them. I use them all the time. The only time you see me with headphones on is when I'm streaming. Even if you watch the videos, right? I never have headphones on in the videos. So that is when I use them. Because I can edit out any of the microphone bleeding that may happen when I'm recording videos. I cannot really do that in the stream, right? I cannot go live in the stream and toggle things on and off and stuff like that when I'm just chatting, and especially if I want to chat over the music while it's playing. There's no real good way of doing that while playing it through monitors. So for that reason, I never use the monitors when streaming, but that is the only time I don't use the monitors. Like, I hate headphones. I don't like wearing headphones like this. You see me constantly fiddling with them when I'm streaming. And the reason for that is I only use them when I'm streaming. I was hoping for something maybe a little bit more shimmerish, a little bit brighter that we could band pass over maybe. How do you rate them 0 to 10? I don't have a lot of contrast. I cannot really compare them to a lot of other monitors. Personally, I really like the sound that they have. They sound really good, but it may be the case that because I haven't heard any other monitor, that is just my lack of experience speaking. I don't think so, because everything I've heard from them makes it seem like they make really good monitors. Also, I need to put them in a space where they work well. Because right now, one is behind, or one of them has a wall behind it and the other one doesn't. They're not perfectly in the center of the room. The ceiling is slanted, as you can maybe see, like right there in the angle, in the corner. You may be able to see the ceiling in my camera. I don't know, I have stuff on top of my OBS, so I cannot see that. But if you can see that there's like a ceiling right above here. So acoustics wise, this is the worst spot to put them in. I've explained this many times before, but I understood that when I got them, that they wouldn't perform properly in here, because I'm only staying here up until September and then I'm moving anyway. So I'm not really caring too much about the I guess the functionality of the monitors in here. They work fine for what they need to do, but I don't expect them to be the proper sound yet. That is going to happen when I go to the next room, hopefully, where I can set them up with just having monitors from the beginning. Because that is what happened in the last time I came here. I set up this studio space mainly for filming, right? I wanted to have some decorations in the background. I wanted to have this thing back here. I wanted to have the couch back there. I even wanted to put some art up on the wall there, but I never got around to that. You can maybe still see one of the stickers that I tried to put up there and fell off. So I really set up this space for just looks in terms of recording when I'm recording stuff. But the next space, I'm going to try to do it both acoustically and looks. To try to get both of them. To get it to look good and to work acoustically. At least putting the monitors on the long side of the room, in the middle, properly angled. They are properly angled in that one is on the left side of the screen, obviously, and the other is on the right side of the screen, and they form an equilateral triangle. But I believe the equilateral triangle is a little bit too small for what they need. So even there, when I get to the new apartment, I may move them a little bit further, like, out. But I'll have to investigate all of that, and I'll have to look up a lot of things on how that works even before. To be honest, the whole move is going to be a mess, because there's not a single contract in place for the place yet. Like, no electricity, no gas, no water, no nothing. And I'm moving, the contract is ending here in this apartment on the 1st of September. And technically the contract is also starting on the 1st of September in the other apartment. So I should move everything in a day. And I was like, that cannot happen. I cannot do that. So I need to put my stuff in there earlier. So that, of course, at the 1st of September, I can leave this place at least. And then I need to set up all of the contracts while I'm actually already living there. Which is annoying because that means that for a time I would not have any electricity probably. For a time I don't have any water. For a time I don't have any gas. Which means that I cannot cook either in that other apartment because they have like a gas stove and a gas oven, I believe, or maybe electric oven. But that would mean that I wouldn't be able to cook anything, which would be annoying. So there's a lot of casino coming my way, as they say in Italian, but I'll get through that. Maybe there is a way for me to arrange the contracts earlier, but I'm also going to go away for a week in August up until the 22nd, because I'm going to my parents who have their anniversary on the 15th, and then from the 17th up until the 22nd there will be WoW Festival down in Perugia where I'm going. It's the second festival that I'm attending this year. By the way, a lot of people came up to me during the Burning Mountain Festival to say hi and whatnot and to take pictures. I had my first fan pic taken. If you're here, I want that pic. Sure, by the way. I didn't get it myself. The person didn't send it to me. There were 2 people that took pictures of me, and neither of them like sent them to me, but it would be cool to have them because it would be like my first ever fan picture, I guess. But there were also people that said like I was scared of talking to you, or scared of, or nervous to walk up to you, because it's maybe a little bit awkward or something like that. I once again want to reiterate that I absolutely don't mind it. There were a few conversations that I had that were a little bit awkward because they happened in the middle of the dance floor, which is not the best place to have a long conversation like this, right? You know, constantly people that you don't know blaring in your ear is a little bit strange. But even that, I don't really mind it. Just walk up to me. If you really want to have a long conversation, we'll step off the dance floor for a little bit. But yeah, generally speaking, I really liked being approached by people and people saying hi, and people waving to me as well is also really nice, even if they didn't, walk up to me and say hi or whatever. It was just a very strange feeling having, over the course of an entire festival, I guess, several people wave at you, and I think I had like 7-8 interactions of people that I just completely didn't know, right? So that only know me from my tutorials, and I have no idea who they are. I'd love to have more of that in WoW Festival, because it is really, really cool for that to happen. Hey man, I was wondering if you use asset like mid-base that is commonly found in trance. Would love some tutorials for it. Are you playing there? I'm not playing, no. I'm just attending for the party. Next year I hope to play parties. That would be cool. But as you guys know, I'm still working on my DJing skills. When it comes to the asset mid base, by the way, we don't really do that in Psytrance, because Psytrance doesn't really have a mid base, it just has this. Right, with the kick it sounds. Normally it would be like this, I guess. This would be your like standard kick and bass for Psytrance, right? If you have that rolling thing. Generally speaking, this is everything that we do in terms of the baseline. When it comes to like mid layers and stuff like that, we sometimes have stuff like this on top of it, which is the groovy stuff. But this isn't really like an asset baseline. like to me, an acid baseline is a baseline that has a lot of resonance on its filters, because that is where the acid sound comes from. That's not happening here, right? Even this, I don't think, even has a resonance parameter to it, this filter effect over here. But these two filters, as you can see, have none of that. This is a preset. This one from my latest Vital Pack, also my only Vital Pack. The other sound that makes up this idea of those groove elements is something that Subject Ultra made. So I have no idea how this was made. All I know it's made in Sylev 1. Can you talk about how it's filtered? Because the majority of the time I've tried it sounds really ass. When it comes to the filtering on these patches, for one, there's a lot of filtering happening in here. There's one band pass, I believe. I'm not entirely sure how this works, but if I understand this right, this would be a low pass, this would be a high pass, making this a band pass. Don't quote me on that. Then we have, I guess, two separated filters over here for the sample versus this thing over here. Again, you can just download, or you can just buy my Vital Pack, and you'll get this patch if you really want it. But it goes through the multiband compressor. It goes through the course for extra stereo. I'm removing some of the extra low end here. Then, in terms of processing on this thing, I have M character, which I have no idea what it's doing. To be honest, I don't remember setting this up either. I have M stereo spread over here. There's somebody at my door. Give me 2 seconds. I'll continue explaining later, but I have to get a package. Sorry, it's a bit of a mess. I tried to put on the whole track for the break, but that didn't work. I'll continue explaining what I'm doing with the processing later on that bass thing here. I think I need to organize a little bit, so I'm actually going to take a proper break here, and then Sorry, I'm a bit out of breath. I live on the 3rd floor. I had to run down, run up, run down, and run up again. Yeah, I'll take a quick break. It's a little bit of a mess here. And then once we get back, I'll continue explaining that one patch, the one idea there. And then we'll get back into production. Anyway. What track should I put? I guess this collab that I'm working on with Mind B would be interesting for you guys. This is the right one, right? Yes. Okay. Once this track is finished, I'll be back and then we'll continue doing what I was doing. I just have to organize a few things and then we'll get right back.
So, let us dream big. Let us dream big. Let us dream big. Let us dream big. reality is, digital has allowed us to do whatever the heck we want. If you want to mimic any time period, you can do it. The tools are there.
Become one with the machine.
Am I tripping or is it a square base? This part indeed is a square base. Which I think is really cool. So to go back into what I was talking about before. Sorry for the whole mess that happened. As you may have heard on the microphone, somebody did call and there was a package delivered. Usually when I get packages delivered, I always try to have like tracking on it and stuff like that. So when you buy off of Amazon, you always, if you use Prime, at least get like a tracking thing where you get to see when the package arrives. And I try to not stream when I know that stuff is arriving at my house on the day. But for this particular package, and this was the first one that I got in maybe like a year or so, there wasn't like a tracking thing available because I didn't purchase it through Amazon. I don't think I get to spoil it yet what it is, but maybe later I get to share what it is as well in maybe a couple of streams. Would be cool. For now though, it's a package that I couldn't just order off of Amazon. It's a thing that I couldn't just order off of Amazon. It's not like a big thing or anything like that. Don't get your hopes up. Maybe it is. We'll have to see. But it is at least a cool thing. I think he was asking because I was about to play our collaboration, might be, during the break. Maybe not. Anyway, I was talking about this thing. I believe I explained the whole patch in here. I think I may mention M character. I think I did mention M character, and when I started talking about M stereo spread, which is just for some stereo within here, that is when the doorbell rang. So after that, we have some EQ to put it in shape, and this is really the main EQ that is putting it in its place. I think that that is giving it its tone that I want. yeah, this is very, very dull. And there's some stuff in here as well, like in the lower frequencies. This stuff we really don't want, because this is still going to clash with our baseline. So we just want the like mid-range stuff over here. And then this one has delay and reverb on it. Reverb, very small room. And delay, pretty tame. I am automating it at one point to make sure that it turns off over here. And that's basically everything that I'm doing with this patch. So for mid-range bass patches and stuff like that, for mid-range character on your tracks, that is what I would use. I think I was busy over here somewhere working on this thing, yeah. Synthetics, welcome. How are you doing? I'm just going to OTT this to see if we can get a stronger texture out of it. After beam, I guess. It seems to have a really long feedback in here. This doesn't have a delay. This does. It has a long feedback. I'm going to lower that. This is a very long delay, that's why. Alright, appreciate it. I'm gonna let you do your thing. Thank you. You don't have to worry about that. I'm here to chat with you guys, as it says in the title. So if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot them my way. I think it's cooler if it just rises up like this. I want more high frequency stuff in there though. Noah, welcome. I like that, but maybe not everywhere. This one is strange. Did I copy that over wrong? I may have copied it over wrong. That is maybe why it's not the way that I like it. I had it on the offbeat starting here. Is there a classic rolling bass line in this track? Technically, this is a rolling bass line. It's just that we added extra groove through velocity. So you can see it's just a normal rolling bass line pattern. It's just that the groove with these velocity notes or with these velocity settings change. So it's always going to be like this. It's always going to be the same vibe that I'm trying to go for here. I would like to have a few tracks that are just purely this progressive kind of bass line. I like that vibe as well. I heard a few tracks that are like that as well as, or at least parts of a track like that were on the festival. And there, either they will have maybe like a part of it that is a different bass line or a rolling bass line or something like that. But I think getting a groove like this, where it's just one kick and bass idea, would be really cool, especially because in this one I'm experimenting with these groove elements being like everywhere, which I talked about in, I guess this can go up here for organization purposes. I talked about that in a video recently about how I'm now thinking about my grid synths, at least for this track. in that they're just in, not like in a specific part, but they're throughout the whole track. So for that reason, I also want to keep the baseline the same throughout the whole track, so that with that idea, we can put some main elements on top of that, like this stuff. I guess not really this synth over here, which is just like an add-on to the grid synths here, but stuff like, you know, this main ARP thing here. That's cool to put on top of it. But the main idea of this track is that it's same kick and bass, same main groove elements, of course also with the drums that are included, these drums in here, and of course our main top drums. So the whole idea of the track is to stick to specifically this bass line. And it's also something that I've done before with the other production that has like a progressive bass line. Right? For those that remember. Interestingly, the project lengths seem to be the same. I guess this was the length for the collab I did with Mind B, which is interesting. So this production over here, for those that remember, also always has this same idea as a bass line throughout the whole track. I also have a track that doesn't do that, that starts with a progressive bass line but becomes rolling bass line later. So I have a little bit of everything in that regard. Here you can see another progressive, groovy kind of bass line. And then over here it becomes rolling. Yeah, and then the rest of the track is just rolling kick and bass. I don't know, I also like just having the normal kick and bass throughout the whole track as a vibe from time to time. Sometimes like it halfway through, stuff like that. It just depends on what I'm in the mood for. I personally don't like writing psytrance in a very rigid structure. One of the things you may notice when it comes to my kick and bass is that it's a little bit all over the place. If I open up my structure track, you'll see that there's a lot of fills in here. There's like little areas over here. There's a lot of drops that aren't a standard length. So this drop over here is 15 bars plus 1 bar of fill, which is the standard length for drops. But what you'll often find is that over here I have 32 here. I have a 24 plus the fill together is 24. So this is 32, of course, again with the fill. But you can see a fill of 2 bars, a fill of 4 bars, which is very long. Another fill of 4 bars, no fill whatsoever here going into the breakdown, which technically isn't correct. This should be a 2-bar fill here, since I introduced that a little bit later. And then you can see over here, it's again not really standard kind of structuring in terms of the different things that I'm trying to do and whatnot. So when it comes to like your standard progression, I guess, for a sideline stack, what you'll often find is that the first drop is rolling bassline, then the second drop is a different bassline, a progressive bassline, or there's some kind of that kind of drop in the middle, and then towards the end, after the breakdown, you go back into your rolling bassline. That is the standard way of doing things. I want to leave a little bit away from that, because I feel like while there is a lot of innovation in the sound design and the technical aspects of psytrance, I feel like it's a little bit lacking in the arrangement, in that I still hear a lot of arrangement where it's just, okay, I'm going to have my 32-bar intro, and then we go into 16-bar kick and bass, then we go into 16-bar kick and bass and snare, then we go into 16-bar kick and bass and snare and some of the top drums, and then we go into 16-bar kick and bass and snare and all of the top drums. Usually what they'll do is they'll have the first 16 or the third 16 bars will be almost all of the top drums except the open hat, and then at the fourth segment of the drop the open hat comes in, and then from there what usually happens is they either lower the energy again, go to lower kick and bass, or they go to a small breakdown that then goes into, as I said before, the second drop, that kind of stuff. That is all pretty standard. That is all the basic ways of working. I want to try to avoid that as much as possible, because I feel like there's innovation still left to be done in the arrangement part of psytrance. When you started this project, what was your inspiration from? Did you start with a lead or vocal? Well, this particular project is a collaboration, so I actually got a project sent to me that I started from. But generally speaking, I would say that I have an idea in mind that I start with. Right? I never really start a project when I'm not in the mood to start a project. And when I am in the mood to start a project, I have some kind of creative idea that I first want to implement. Usually that means that I have to make a kick and bass and maybe some drums on top of that. So that is generally speaking what I start out with if I start a new project, and then I start writing whatever ideas that I have, and then from there it just continues to flow. So this particular project, I got sent the idea to start working with it, and I basically jumpstart the beginning, except that I've replaced the kick and bass. But in other ideas, or in other times, I often either start with a particular idea in mind that lays on top of a kick and bass. So I start with the kick and bass and then start writing that idea on top of it. Or sometimes it's an idea for an intro or a break. In that case, I don't have to make the kick and bass and I immediately start implementing the idea that I have. NXI, a projector, lovely to see you streaming. Thank you. I've been doing it for a little while. I've streamed from time to time. But thank you for stopping by. This thing here was what we're working on. I guess we can freeze this, actually, because I think maybe the delay and reverb is still going to be a little bit too long. And that way we can control it easier. And flatten. It doesn't seem extremely long just by the thing here. By the length of the tail that we get from the freezing, I guess. Okay, so 12 down here. And as you can see, it's still kind of going up in volume and then down. So I'll try to get the volume to actually go up all the way, which I don't think we can achieve with a fade, because the fade is more towards the beginning. So I guess we just have to imprint more of the volume like flow that we want. This is starting to look more like it in that it flows up until this point here, and then it flows down again. It's more in the right channel, which is exactly the shape that I wanted to have, and in the left channel it kind of comes in a little bit earlier and then fades out, but I think that that will be okay. I think another one shot over here would be nice. Let's see what we can find. That's kind of cool. Is it a bar? I think it is, right? I'm going to freeze this again so I can see where the 2 high points of it are. Maybe chop it up a little bit, maybe make it a bit shorter, because I would like it to be half a bar long in here. Otherwise I'm scared that it's too close to this area over here. That's cool. Just that part over there. Do you use a controller to have more control over automations? If not, do you have any particular reason? Most of the time, I don't use my MIDI controller to write in automations. Only if I need a very complex modulation that isn't random, that I personally want to write in. Say that over here I want to write in the filter cutoff. I believe this time it's just done with like a macro like this. So this is one macro doing filter cutoff movement, and then this is another macro doing filter cutoff movement. So this is just slowly flowing up over time. But say that I wanted an even more complex idea on the filter cutoff. You can see both of these. I guess one is for the formants and one is for the filter cutoff. Okay. But say that I wanted to write in something really specific for, I don't know, the level of this thing over here. Then I would map this to MIDI controller, and then I would write it in with the MIDI controller. But other than that, it is almost always faster to write whatever automation that you want. If you want it to flow up, then probably this will do, right? If you want it to flow down, then probably this will do. So this is much faster than writing anything into a MIDI controller, which is really the problem that you're dealing with a MIDI controller, in that, yes, it can be very creative to write in there with a MIDI controller, but it's also a lot more time consuming. And it tends to be the case that you only have creative energy for a certain amount of time, meaning that I try to get as much stuff done in that amount of time where you're actually creative as possible. And one of the ways that I'm trying to do that is be constantly, I guess, worried about the time that I'm wasting doing other things. So setting up a MIDI controller, if I don't have to, is just a waste of time for me, because it usually eats into that part of the time where you're trying to be creative, where you're in that flow, where you have the ideas that you want to have, which of course for everybody tends to be fairly limited throughout the day, that you can actually effectively write stuff. When it comes to this stream, for example, I haven't written any music today before I started this stream. And whenever I stream music production, that is what will happen, because I want to be inspired on stream when I'm writing. And I don't want to sit here and say like, oh, I've done 20 different experiments, 19 of them failed, and we deleted all of the sounds again, and you cannot even see that we made progress on the track. Because that tends to happen after a while. If you are just out of your creative energy, it tends to be the case that you don't really get any good work done, in my opinion. So for that reason, I just like to waste as little time as possible for my creative energy, I guess. Long delay till on that thing there. I don't know if that will be a problem yet. That is also one of those things that I like to leave until the mixing stage to figure out, to see if it's actually becoming a problem, and then to deal with it either through chopping it up or making it shorter, fading out the delay tail, or by gating it. That can also work, because the gate will just deactivate the signal as it goes below a certain threshold. So you have the original release tail that you had up until a certain volume, and then it just cuts off when you no longer need it. It's a very useful trick to get extra space if you're dealing with too many delay tails moving on top of each other. I rarely find myself actually needing to do that though. It tends to be the case that with regular spacing between all of the one-shots, and if you just tweak your delay for the specific length of the one-shot that you need, then it tends to be the case that if you tweak your delay correctly, by this time over here, you're barely going to have any delay left that is actually getting in the way of the next one-shot that is happening. Or, for that matter, other stuff that is happening in the track. Because the one-shot just takes interest over here, and then maybe over here you can hear it fade out, but then it should already be like in the background again over here, right? So this was that like big clap thing. You can still hear the delay now, but if I play it actually in the track, you can hear the delay maybe here-ish. And the same is probably going to be true here. Yeah, you hear a little melodic thing in here. It just barely takes over. Delay comes, and then here it stops. Maybe this is that melodic thing. Yeah, this also has the same thing, right? In that it just takes over for a little bit, delay plays, and then it stops. But you can actually hear, if I pause it after that it doesn't actually stop. It's still playing, in fact. You can even see the last bit of volume just dipping down now. Over here. So it's just perception with the way that it's mixed, the volume that it's mixed at, and the feedback that you give it. The delay tails actually go on for maybe up until here, but it's only really audible in here. And then what I'll probably do is if I use that gate technique, make sure that it kind of stops completely playing over here-ish, if I really need to. Okay, I do think maybe our first drop needs a little bit of extra spice in here. We have this atmosphere over here. Sounded like there was more knocking. I thought somebody was knocking on my door. It definitely needs some more cool stuff. Oh yeah, this was in a group because I wanted to add more stuff to this one shot. We also have this one shot over here, which is this cool digital kind of bubbly sound, but I'm not sure if it's going to work in this track. So I'm going to color this orange here, and then we'll try adding some extra stuff to this one shot to make it more interesting. This fades in, right? Yes, okay. Does this have percussions? I don't think it does, no. Drum hits, percussions here. Okay, then we make an audio track for that. I want to layer maybe a bunch of percussions on top of it to see if that works. These are all very short. These ones even get cut off before they finish playing. That's not good. Ah, in here, wait, yeah. This is where the individual samples are. Even these sounds, why are they so short? It feels like they deliberately shortened this stuff. Right, you cannot tell me that this is like the whole sample. Like, it feels like this, they just cut this part out of a loop. Also because a lot of them have the same kind of texture to it, and maybe even reverb from prior hits. Okay, I'm going to group these together. I'm going to delete this one. And then okay, now we have that, and we can take all of these things and put them on here to get the it sounds a bit cooler, but it needs a little bit more grit to it. It needs a little bit more spice and gluing to it, I guess. So basically what I'm saying is OTT. I want to remove some lower frequencies from this mess here. Just a little variation there. I've recently came across producers using EQ with envelope follower to drop the bass when the kick hits instead of sidechaining. What are your thoughts about this, please? This is probably not something that you have seen in psytrance production, because in psytrance production we don't tend to do that. Kick and bass relationship is very, very important in psytrance production, especially the phase relationship. And a moving EQ is probably the worst thing you can do in terms of phase. Because meaning that a moving EQ means that you have a moving phase shift. So you have a variable phase shift to your bass line, which basically makes it impossible to phase align it with your kick. So it's a dumb idea. It's mainly drum and bass. Yeah, I wouldn't use that in psytrance production. If you're doing drum and bass, it could work. But even then, I am much more a fan of full band sidechaining as opposed to tackling a specific frequency. Again, because it's not... When you're trying to sidechain, it is not the frequency spectrum that is the problem. It is the volume space that you have, right? You want one volume to go out. You want one element to go out of the way, out of another element. That isn't necessarily a frequency problem, specifically if they both have to play in the same frequency range. Like a kick and a bass, they have to play in the same frequency range because they're both low-end elements. So it doesn't really make sense to remove the low end from one element that needs low end for it to function in the track that it plays, in order for the low end of another thing to kind of come through. In that case, I would say you do like full volume down across the whole thing. So just normal sidechaining, as opposed to the individual EQ parameter sidechaining or SUV sidechaining or the many other forms of sidechaining that now exist where you're just doing the low frequencies. Because I have a lot of questions about the people that do that. For one, in regards to if they know what is happening to the phase of their signal when they introduce that crossover frequency that you need for that, or the EQ filter or the EQ peak, if you do it with a peak that you use for that. Do you know what happens to the phase of your bassline when you apply it to it? Have you checked that that works with it? And second, it doesn't actually like fully fix the problem, right? Because at the end of the day, if you need to make space for your kick drum, it's not in the low end that you need to make space for your kick drum, it's in the volume that you need to make space for your kick drum. So if you have a bass line that has a lot of upper harmonics and stuff like that, just removing the lowest harmonics will still leave a lot of extra stuff up at the top, right? Even this bass line, technically it doesn't really have a lot of upper harmonics because it's just for a very short amount of time. But you can see all of this stuff is here. That is still going to be in the way if you're just dropping out the lower frequency over here. So when it comes to that kind of sidechaining, I personally think that it's a bad idea. If you want to do sidechaining, I personally recommend doing actual full band sidechaining. And if you can get away with no sidechaining, then that's probably better for you. To give you an example of that, none of these channels, as you can see, have sidechaining on them. None of these groups over here. This group doesn't have sidechaining. Nothing over here. I can go through it. You'll find no sidechain compressor or LFO tool. And if you see an LFO tool, it is probably used for something other than actual sidechaining. Because I don't actually sidechain my stuff. Right, I wanted to do also something with another one shot over here. This thing over here. I think I'm just going to leave that off for now. I like this sound over here. I'm going to play that at least once more. Here.
Free of worry, free of trouble.
Let's just move some automations around so that it sounds a bit different.
Free of worry, free of trouble, free of any type of anguish.
I feel like I want a different one shot over here so that this happens only twice here. This is the one that is turned off. So I'm going to leave that in there. Maybe we still keep that as a layer. But that means that we need another one shot over here. I guess I'm just going to find a cool sound inside of Omnisphere. I can agree that this is very harsh. It does say harsh instead of harsh, so I misread that. And my joke actually doesn't work. Is this too obvious? Is this too overused, I guess? We'll have to see once I bring on my own delay and reverb. That's cool. Let's remove some of its mid-range. I would like that delay to be a little bit longer, so maybe the clean tape is better here.
Serenity is when you wake up in the morning, free of worry, free of trouble, free of any type of anguish.
Yeah, human, welcome to the stream. I have no idea what UVI shade is. Create a filter any Q. Aha. Looks very interesting. I assume this is what you meant with people using this for sidechaining, right? It does look very interesting. Maybe I'll try it out sometime. I would like some more stuff happening maybe over here as well. We should have another melodic one-shot, right? That it's this guy over here, yeah. We can have that play so that it stops here, I guess. I thought I had multiple... Or do I have different automations for it? Not even that. Okay. I guess we can make some variations on this thing. That way we can copy that over here. It's wild for making your own filters. It does look pretty cool. It seems to have 35 already built-in filters, but I'm assuming that you can somehow combine them and stuff like that. At least that is what I would say is the description of like a creative filter plugin. But UV, I know, makes some really cool plugins, so I trust them with this kind of stuff as well. Did I see the new Ableton beta? Yes, I'm not really that impressed with it. Again, there are some cool features in there. There's a few issues that people had that were addressed. But I don't think that Ableton 12 or maybe even 13, 14, 15, anything in the future will ever address the two issues that I've raised, plugin sandboxing and proper delay compensation, like being able to switch to a different delay compensation. Those are my main two issues with Ableton Live. Either redo the delay compensation, finally accept that you're a DAW and no longer, or less of a live program, that you're a DAW with live capabilities as opposed to a live production program with DAW capabilities, because I think 95% of its user base are going to be using it as a DAW only. So I would love to see at least an option for normal DAW plugin delay compensation behavior, as opposed to the one optimized for live performance like they have now. And yeah, second, plugin sandboxing, I think at least should be a standard option in every DAW from now on, and they should be working towards implementing that. Both of those features probably require rewrites of like core systems of the software. I thought bounce in place too. Yeah, I guess bounce in place. I would say bounce in place is the third thing. I don't really mind sitting here and waiting. Like, I guess it's annoying freezing a track and waiting for that, but it's not something that I look against as like really hindering me in my creative process. Like, I can still do it, and if I really want to do it quickly, I can make an audio track and then just record the part, right? That being said, it would be an upgrade if over here it would say freeze, and it would just allow you to freeze this segment of the thing that you've highlighted or whatever you highlight on the timeline. Even if it's empty space, that could be really cool for some generative stuff even. That you can just say, oh, render me 16 bars of this thing that I have set up so that it's just constantly outputting sound. Can you just render 16 bars of that for me? Just this part here, and then you just right click and it says freeze somewhere. And what it would do for you then is it would just pop in a new audio track with the sample right here that you just froze. Right? As opposed to having to go through and freeze a whole track. In this case, freezing this track is a little bit annoying. Say that I wanted to freeze this track over here, right? If I wanted to do that, the freezing algorithm would start over here and it would start playing and going through it over here. It goes through it up until over here. It looks, does this have a tail? Yes, it does have a tail. The tail goes up until here. And maybe for extra measure, it does a little bit extra. I don't know exactly how it works. Of course, I cannot look into the code. But from experimentation, what I've seen is that it starts at the start and it just freezes. It just renders everything up until the point where there's no sound for the last time. By the last clip, I believe. So in this case, there could be an even worse case scenario which would be this. In the sense that it has to render all of this stuff over here until this point over here just for me to get this amount of actual audio in it. And even if I just wanted to render out this clip without the tail, for example, it would still have to render the tail in the current setup, which is less than ideal, as you can imagine. It would be much better if Ableton just allowed you to, as I said, select a region and then right click and then freeze that region to new audio track. That should just be an option, as opposed to having to constantly freeze from here. I know they made freeze and flatten into one button, but even that doesn't actually solve the major time waste of not having bounce in place, and that is that it has to render a very long segment of your track just to be able to render out the small segment over here. Right? I agree. I thought it was in place too. I read that. I think Volcano is a real competitor. Yeah, then I guess, what the plugin is trying to do. After trying Bitwig, I hate waiting for freeze to finish. I do understand, yeah. I do remember when I was testing out Bitwig that it was really, really fast to bounce stuff out like that. That being said, that was also a much smaller project. The issue with freezing really compels with the size of your project. Not just the amount of tracks that you have and the amount of plugins that you have, but also the length of the project that you have. Because it starts rendering from the start, I think. So it basically, from what I understand, it basically renders it just like a normal render would do. You know, the one that you do through here. Of course, with whatever you're rendering soloed. And then it just plops that onto an audio track that replaces it. But in the Bitwig one, as you said, it's just right click on here and it just renders out this part of the sound. There can be some issues with that. Like right now with the freezing option, there will always be a tail behind it. There can be cases where if you render this out, it doesn't maybe finish properly, or there would have been a delay tail that you're now cutting off because you're just rendering out this segment over here. To me personally, I would probably look at that as something that the user just needs to get used to. If they want something with a longer tail, they should be able to maybe do something like this and then freeze or bounce, however you want to call it, from here. In my opinion, that should be an option. I guess they expect people to be working in clips, but I like arrangement view. Even from what I've seen from some live performances, in Psytrance that are done in Ableton, they get done in the arrangement view, and that they just put their tracks already like transitioning into each other just in an arrangement, and then they play that, and that is how it works for that mix. That is also how I used to plan out my very few, or my earliest few mixes that I did for Eclipse. I planned those things out also inside of the arrangement view, where I just have 2 tracks and then it would alternate between tracks like that. So even for live performance, I guess arrangement view sometimes is used. But I understand what you mean. I think even by default, when you open up a new installation of Ableton, doesn't it open up by default in here and you have to move to arrangement mode for it to actually become a DAW? You can select more than the tail to render. You can select more than the clip to render tail in Bitwig. Yeah, I guess that is what I'm trying to say, that in terms of the system that I would personally like to see in place is, if you want to render the clip, you right click the clip and it gives you a render option. If you want to render the clip with the fade, you select something like this and then it gives you the render option, and then it would render out your selected area as opposed to just the clip itself. I can't remember, I always use 2 monitors. Do you? I do for Reaper, but for Ableton I'm always 1 monitor. Even when I'm producing on, like, not in this... You can imagine that if I'm doing something for the stream or for tutorials or stuff like that, that I would do everything in 1 window, right? Because I don't have the capabilities to move to a second desktop. But when it comes to production in general, I like to always be looking at the same stuff. When it comes to the mixing is really, or Reaper is really hard to put that all into 1 monitor, because you want to have a proper mixer window and a proper arrangement window for you to look at when you're mixing. Even there, when I'm doing tutorials or mixing streams and stuff like that, where you see Reaper all in one interface, it's a little bit annoying to work with. But when I'm just producing like this, I never use a dual monitor setup. I just use the single monitor here, and to be honest, I barely use arrangement view, and if I do, I just switch to it, do whatever I need to do. Usually it involves me clicking these things to check certain peak levels of certain elements. That is really the only thing that I need to switch to this view for. But yeah, other than that, I'm personally always on 1 monitor. It is interesting though. I do see it a lot, people producing on multiple monitors. I've seen people have like dual monitor in front of them, because I have a triple monitor setup, but it's right. I have my main monitor screen in the middle, where my camera is, right under there. I have my audio monitors, so my speakers right next to them, and then I have more monitors next to that. So from my perspective, those are pointing like there, as opposed to what you sometimes see where you have 2 monitors next to each other, where one is pointing like there and one is pointing there. So it's easy to switch from one to the other, where if I do this, you sometimes see it if I'm reading the stream health or the chat or something like that, I have to like move my body to read like this. If you have to do that for every decision that you have to make, you're going to get very strong neck muscles while you're producing. I use my second monitor for graphs and scopes. Yeah, even that, I just leave that on the main monitor, and I would rather scroll up to something like SciScope and open it up if I need it. Because to be honest, SciScope or any other graph like that, you don't really need when you're just day-to-day producing. If you're doing something specific, like making your kick and bass, then obviously you would have SciScope open. But once I'm finished with the kick and bass and I'm happy with it, I close out of it again, and then I just work like this. Ableton on a single screen sucks. I disagree. I like it. I like that everything... To be honest, when it comes to the interface of Ableton, I like that everything is able to be placed on one screen, and that you're essentially able to do everything that you need to do from just this arrangement view. Right? You have your volume over here and your panning, and really your only benefit of this view is, as I said, at least to me, that you have this stuff over here where you can actually check what the peak volumes of your tracks are. That would be cool to, at least to some extent, have integrated in here as well. But other than that, there isn't anything on the other view that I desperately need in front of me all the time, right, on an actual monitor. It's more that the plugins get in the way of. It's more that the plugins get in the way on one screen, but I do make clips, then drag them over. For the plugins, I can see that if you're doing stuff with multiple plugins, like if you open a few things up like this, it gets pretty wild, especially if you have some plugins that are like big like this. Right, this isn't workable. For that, I could see having another bigger screen. Of course, not in this space where I currently live, but maybe in the next space where I have like an actual plugin window somewhere. But even then, I would probably just upgrade to maybe a 4K monitor and have everything smaller on there, as opposed to having a separate monitor that I then have to either stare up at or stare to the side. Because I like just having my eyes fixed here and just, you know, sitting here in the same position, slowly making music. Just got my hands on Syscope. I think you have a video on how to route the channels for the kick and bass in layers, isn't it? I think I have videos that address it. I don't know if I have a video specifically on it. I can give you a tour of my thing here in Ableton. What I can also do is send you this track thing over here. If I just... Is this the same one? No. Syscope for inputs. Okay, I can send this in here. Resources. So explore. And then Syscope for in. This should work because there's no samples on here. Because this is just an ALS file. Which means that it's a track and not a project. Perfect. I record guitars and vocals, so it's a different scenario. Yeah, every production style is going to depend on the type of music that you make and your workflow as a whole as well. If you're the kind of person that likes to open up a lot of plugins and then start tweaking things, or like me, you are the kind of person that opens plugin, makes tweak, closes plugin, moves on to the next plugin, opens it, makes tweak, closes it, move on to the next. You know what I mean? Anyway, when it comes to this track over here, the Syscope setup, this should all be set up with the routing into the plugin. All you have to do is go into the kick channels over here that you can use. I have 2 kick channels and 2 bass channels. It doesn't really matter if there's a kick going into it or a bass. You just have to set your input to the right thing. So over here, if I want to monitor another track, say that I do want to monitor, let's say, for the hell of it, we monitor these 2 things over here. So we're going to be looking for 54 group over here. You just go in here, and then 54 group. And as you can see, it's already all set up with all of the inputs that it needs. And now it should show up in layer number 1. for some reason. Maybe that group for in a particular kind of way adds a little bit of extra latency, but I had to compensate for that in the latency, but you can see that it's working. At least. Hopefully. Time to hit the couch, have fun, y'all. Thank you for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed. Get the reverb on this thing. What if I just take this part here? Or this here? Kind of fades into there nicely. And then we can maybe make some other synths in front and around that. Just going to group all of this together. Drop it in here. I'll even make sure that this is closer to 0 dB, I guess. That might be going over it. This should be pretty close, hopefully. And then all I'm going to do is just drop everything in terms of processing on here and then carry that over. It's already a cool sound, but it would be nicer if there's something that combines them. So I think maybe like a squelch in here would be a cool addition. I probably already have a squelch in this project, but I always like when I'm doing sounds like this, where I have a specific purpose for it, I like to make a new sound for it. As I said before, I don't really care about the track amount that my track has in order for me to do the workflow that I want, or have the workflow that I want to have, I guess. It's just that it's easier to have your sounds all separated by category of the way that you want them to work. Right? Because this sound is going to have a specific function in that it's part of this mass of one-shots over here. And then there's a different... I think this thing over here is the squelch that I have now. Yeah, this is different squelch. Well, this could probably work under this thing over here. It's a better idea to just make two of them. So that you can tweak the patch however you want. As opposed to trying to reuse patches in multiple different ways, which I sometimes see people do in order to save on tracks. Well, nowadays I don't think it's really that important. I think most CPUs are able to handle at least 100 tracks, if not more. Unless you're working on like an older laptop kind of thing. So just go well with the amount of tracks that you have. It's definitely an interesting texture that we're getting from that. Let's see what happens if I push everything together. Definitely want to be stereo on here. Maybe a little bit quieter on this. Bro, as a sound designer, what do you think about micro music? I would need to Google what exactly you mean by that. Is it this thing? It's an AI tool for generating vital synthesizer presets from audio samples. Version 1.1 is available now. The problem configuring synthesizers is a challenging process. No, it is not. It is something that you can learn. Even when you know exactly how you want your synth to sound, and even if you have a reference sample, it can take hours of hard work and iterations to tune your synths just to get the sound right. How is this a problem? This is the fun part. The solution, we have taken the part that is fun about music production and we have removed it from you. Why? I get that not everybody finds joy in music production or sound design specifically. But isn't this part of being a musician? Isn't that making the sounds? Or at least finding the sounds? In this case, you just input an audio sample and it gives you the exact preset that you want, or at least very close to it. Why would you want that? I guess if you're going to use this, for one, I assume that it doesn't really work on psytrance sounds. I think it will mostly work on very basic sounds, like the stuff that you'll hear in just normal EDM, I guess, because that is the more mainstream stuff, or maybe like simple plugs, or an 808, or I don't know, that kind of stuff. The stuff that is like very popular to use, right? Maybe like a pad for hip hop or something like that. So to me, this isn't. I don't think that this will. I've never tested this. First of all, I've never experimented with this. I have just found out about its existence, but it feels to me like it's taking out a part of the music making process, which to me is the most fun. I understand that that's not for everybody, but there's another problem with this, is that it's not really a solution as they would like to market it, because for one, you would still need to find the right audio sample of the sound that you want. So you're just, instead of browsing presets for the sound that you want, or designing the sound that you want, the problem has shifted into now finding exactly the right audio file that has the sound that you want, that you can then turn into a preset to play the melody that you want. At the end of the day, you still have to search for, or you still have to do work to get the sound, right? Like, this is not like what's the other thing? Synth GPT, that plugin where you just type in a prompt for a sound and it just outputs a bunch of different synths for you to choose, or a bunch of different sounds for you to choose from. That is really like, you don't know what you want and you just type in something and you try to find happy accidents in that. This is more like you still need to find the sound that you're trying to get Vital to make, right? It's for me personally, it removes the fun, but even if it wouldn't do that, it doesn't seem like it actually solves the problem that it's trying to solve. It just moves it a step. Instead of trying to find the preset that you like, you're now trying to find the audio file that has the sound in it that you then turn into the preset that you like. Overall, I also have another opinion on this, and that is that it's terrible stuff because it directly competes with my business model. But that is business projector talking as opposed to creative projector talking. Those are two different people. You can imagine that as somebody who sells presets, any AI company that tries to automate the process of preset making is something that I vehemently disagree with, because that is going to take away my sales at the end of the day. If people need to rely less and less and less on presets to make the music that they want, I'll lose finances because of that. I'll lose income because of that. So there is another side to this story in which I am much more against it, but that is purely out of personal reasons. That is not something that I would, I guess, let's just say that the earlier opinion is something that I think is true whoever you are as a musician. Like, even if you're just starting out, the problem still is, as I said before, that you now have to find the audio sample as opposed to the preset that you want. That is a problem for everybody, right? Whereas the financial income aspect of somebody that sells presets, I guess you guys don't really care about that because you're never in the position where you like sell your presets. But from my perspective, at the end of the day, I am the kind of person that sells presets. I make an income selling presets, at least partially. It is a substantial part of my income. So to me, these kind of tools seem to go a little bit against my business model as well, which is the part that I'm a little bit more scared of than just how it influences music itself. In the way that also people like say that the new AI systems are going to be generating all of our music from now on, and people are just going to be uploading heaps and heaps of music generated with like Sona and those kind of tools. I think we're still at least a couple of years off until the quality is good enough that people are actually going to listen to it, not just because it's a gimmick, but because it's actually good music. And even then, I think at that point, socially, we will be at the time where AI has taken over so much of our lives that we would look back to, or we would try to find more human artists. I think people will specifically look for the human artist again after a while. I think this AI stuff, the creative part of the AI stuff, is going to go up for a little while still, and then it's gonna go down again. I think we're still like in the growing phase of it, but at some point people are going to realize, hey, for these parts of the things, it is really nice. For this thing that I'm trying to make, I can use an AI image as a starting off point, and then I can work from there. But I always think that after a few years, we're going to go back to mainly enjoying, I guess, human art aided by AI, as opposed to AI generated stuff just being everything. You know what I mean? Where there's no human taking care of it whatsoever. Because you can already see that a little bit in that we used to have a much bigger problem on YouTube Shorts with people reading out Reddit posts in automated voices and then just putting gameplay on it, and that was purely AI made, or at least automated, not fully AI, but maybe you would give it a couple of video files and then it would spit out automatic like shorts from that and stuff like that, right? The whole thing is optimized, those faceless channels kind of thing. That is already going away, at least to a certain extent. People are already catching on to that. That is just not good content. It's less enjoyable than an actual human speaking to you into a microphone that you see on the camera, that you see move. Maybe at some point AI is going to be good enough to trick us into thinking that there's a human speaking when there's not. But I'll have to see. That may be a whole different conversation in that case. But I believe, at least for the music part of it, people would still want to have a little bit of a human touch to their music. And I think that may even be a little bit selfish the way that they say it now, but I think that may involve the stuff that I do, which is making tutorials, making videos, doing live streams where I just show you how I make my music. So that you know that there's a human doing everything. It's like Photoshop did the creative AI and they killed the fun of creative production. True. There's a lot of arguments here in the sense that it is true on the one hand that if you introduce an AI feature like that Photoshop thing that they did, or the Premiere Pro, which I'm a little bit more familiar with, where you just type something in and an edit will happen. So say, for example, that somebody is wearing a blue tie and you want it to be a red tie. Normally what you would need to do is set up some very specific color correction, and you would need to maybe track it or not track it, mat it, or key it, I'm sorry. Keying is the right term for it, where you just try to select just the tie as its own like little clip in the video editing thing so that you can change its color, which is a difficult process because it has to happen over multiple frames, of course. They showed off a AI tool where you can just type in like make the tie blue as opposed to red, and it would just do that, right? Which is really easy. It is taking away a little bit of the creative process, but in this case the creative process is just setting up a very technical key for this little effect that I want. I can still see a tool where you type in the effect that you're trying to create as opposed to creating it yourself. It's still at least a little bit creative in the sense that you need to come up with the idea still. There's a lot of interesting things that you can talk about here with the AI discussion. It's a very big discussion. Sometimes you hear traditional musicians criticize the fact to do music with a computer. Yeah, the computer was the same thing for music. It was a way to automate part of the process, make it faster, make it more efficient. But there's also a whole bunch of new techniques that came out of the computer that we cannot do in any other way. Like any spectral technique that you're using, there's no other way of doing that as far as I know. Like there's no analog soothe, right? Soothe can only exist in the digital domain as far as I know, because it uses FFTs and whatnot. So every tool is going to have both a negative and a positive. The question is just, is the negative actually bigger than the positive, or are people just over exaggerating the negative or the positive to create this kind of imbalance? It's always the case that when you're comparing two different systems, you always have to take all of the positives and all of the negatives of the two different things that you're comparing, right? A world with AI in music production and a world without AI in music production. True, it can be that there's less creativity and stuff like that, but there's also more music because the AI is making more music. So there's also positives to it. Maybe you say, okay, yeah, the market gets oversaturated, so that is also not a negative. There's so many perspectives and so many things that you have to take into account with a discussion like this that it's just hard to talk about it. It's really hard to see where this goes. And really the only thing that you can do as a musician and a consumer of music as well is just hope that they don't get to your niche. And in that regard, I'm happy that I make psytrance, because that is probably one of the last things that they're going to get right in terms of automating the music part of it. I heard some synth GPT presets and they're not great for psytrance. I've heard some Sona examples of psytrance and they always put lyrics on top, so clearly they haven't found out how psytrance work yet. The AI still doesn't know exactly what to make of it. But there's a lot of interesting developments and it's going to get faster and faster. That's always how it happens with innovation, of course. But we'll just have to see. AI music isn't my first fear about AI, it's the flying slaughter bots. To be honest, I think that that's unrealistic. I don't think in the next few years at least, of course, I can never say never, but I don't think in the next few years we're going to get to a point where an AI is just in control of everything to the point where they can start manufacturing their own robots or their own drones or whatever. Because that is what you would need to have for that to happen, right? If you're saying like an AI apocalypse, if the AI actually wants to do something physical, it would need to have some physical being in this world, like a drone, as you say, like the bots, whatever. At some point, either they need to be made by humans, or we need to give the AI access to a factory that makes those kind of bots. And I hope to God that, or not really to God because I'm not religious, but I hope to a higher power or whatever is watching us and holding us back from our own stupidity, that we as humans never give an AI just a factory of killer robots or the ability to control some killer robots or whatever. I know that there's already developments happening where they have the Boston Dynamics bot with a gun on its back. I've seen that, like an AI-powered robotic dog that can go onto the battlefield. But I hope also those things will never just replace police officers, for example. That they never walk around just in the streets, but that they're very specific to the battlefield kind of thing. I like how Projector closes his eyes when he's visualizing stuff. It's like a chess player, right? I just... yes. Okay. I don't know why I do that. It's giant cosmic spaghetti. Yeah. There's a lot of things involved. I don't know why I speak like that. I hope that it comes over as sincere and that you can actually see me thinking about what I'm trying to say. I've noticed recently, while recording shorts, I started doing that. In that, I would get to the point where I was in the edit and I would have half of the intros recorded with my eyes closed for some reason. You know the reaction intro thing that I do? If I have like somebody else's short as a beginning, I react to that. The reaction would always be like with my eyes closed like this, right? So I would explain something with my eyes closed. It would look very, very bad, especially because it's the first time that you see me in the short. And I would need to re-record all of them. It's something that I've started doing more, I guess. At least I noticed it more while recording in the last few months. I don't know where it's coming from, this development, but yeah, I just tend to close my eyes when I speak. Which is really bad for YouTube. I'm thinking more of drones that are ordered to kill. Yeah, but they need to exist physically for an AI to be able to use them, right? If you're scared that an AI is going to take over the world with killer drones and stuff like that, if you're scared about individual killer drones that are ordered to kill, you're right. Those already exist. They're already in use in the battlefield in Ukraine and stuff like that, but they, I think, for the most part, still get controlled by a human. And even then, that is constrained to the battlefield, right? There's not really a chance for one of those kind of drones to just randomly fly into your house. But I understand that if you say it like, say that we replace the police force with robots. If somehow we found an AI that could do policing, and we made a robot that it could be inside so that it could like physically move around and stuff like that. Then I can see that you would be, I guess, scared of that idea. But that would still be a choice that we would first need to make as humans. Right? Like we need to say, okay, we're going to develop these robots, we're going to develop this AI. I really doubt that in the Western world we will ever see those kind of things ever like actually be rolled out. Maybe in a place like China they would try something like that, and then it would get onto the news and it would make everybody in the West really scared of that kind of thing. But drones used for killing, ordered by humans, already exist. They use them all the time on at least the battlefield in Ukraine, but probably also other wars nowadays. Drones have become like a very big thing in war. As far as I've heard from Ukrainian fronts and stuff like that, they use it to like drop grenades and maybe even just crash them into a tank with a bomb attached to it or something like that. Because it's essentially a scaled down like fighter jet, right? You just attach the weaponry to it below it, either if it's a bomb or maybe you want it to fly directly into a plane, then you can just kamikaze the thing. If it's like a really cheap drone or whatever, or even the Iranian drones that Russia sent or that Russia used, it's basically just a lawnmower engine with a propeller behind it and some wings, and then you just put the payload in the front, and whenever it impacts again, it's just going to explode. So that I think already happens. That I think already exists. Yeah, military drones, they exist everywhere. I mean, the United States has those ones that can fly 10 kilometers up in the air and shoot rockets from there down to the ground. I don't think that they like actually shoot rockets. Maybe they bomb stuff. Maybe they have to move down to bomb stuff and then fly back up again. But the Americans have had drones that are able to kill people for decades, I think. Which GPU do you have? I did recently, over on the projector channel, or the also projector channel, my second channel, post a video in which I revealed all of my PC specs. So
This is like a secret.
I'll send you that. I think in here I talk about it. I believe I can also find it in here somewhere. If you just quickly want to check it. Yeah. An AMD Radeon RX 660. 6600. 6600. To say it like that. To be honest, I don't know if it's a great GPU or not. It should be a good enough GPU to do the things that I need to do with it. Of course, the GPU for me is always one of those things that I could upgrade to actually improve my workflow, to actually improve my working speed, because it would just improve my rendering times of all of the videos that I'm rendering. That being said, I render almost all of the long format videos overnight anyway, so my rendering times don't really matter. And I think from memory, this GPU, when I bought it almost 2 years ago now, it was $200. So 220 maybe? Was that? How much is it now? Yeah, now it's 200 euros. I see one for 160, but that's an XT. I have a normal one. XT, I think, is maybe like a slim version or a smaller version of it. But yeah, they're like $200. So for music production, to be honest, the main reason why you probably need a GPU for music production is so that you can have like 3 monitors in your setup. So you can't use NVIDIA's broadcast, which can help you with your closed eyes if it's bothering you. Yeah, that is true. I cannot use a lot of the NVIDIA AI tools. Also, a lot of the tools for the visuals. Subject Ultra, as you know, as you guys probably know, he makes all of the visuals for the Eclipse channel, for the label. And he does the morphing AI thing. I cannot do that personally because I have an AMD graphics card and there's no AI built for AMD that does that, as far as I know. There's a few things like FlowFrame now has, or has had a while, a few AMD algorithms, but they're not as good as the NVIDIA algorithms. For AI stuff, NVIDIA seems to be better, or at least more supported, right? Even though I think AMD, has always been, price performance wise, better than Nvidia. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm a big nerd, but I'm not that big of a nerd that I know all of that kind of stuff about PC building. I build a PC once every decade, and that's enough for me. It does work with AMD. Oh, I've heard many times that certain AIs that do those kind of visuals either flat out don't work with AMD, or they're much slower on AMD. AMD issue was always the drivers and the support. Yeah. You would think that for people that are now buying up GPUs and hoard, that the price to performance metric would be very important. And as far as I know about PC building, like it's close, right? It's not like a big gap. But I've always heard that AMD is better value for money. Just in pure performance to how much you pay for it, kind of thing. It usually uses a little bit more power. It gets maybe a little bit hotter. That's also true for my CPU, which is also an AMD one. But anytime I looked into getting PC parts, both now over a decade ago when I first built this PC, and then 2 years ago when I decided on upgrading some of the components, both times AMD was the better, just value for money, like option. Okay, I've been streaming for 3 hours. I am going to continue a little bit more, but I want to take another quick break in which I'll play this track over here that I played earlier. So that you guys can have a listen to it again, this time for full. Once it's finished over here, we'll continue working on this project over here. But in the meantime, you guys get to hear this fun production. I'll be back in a little bit, and I hope you enjoy the music.
Tell you what I know.
Where are we getting our experience from? Where are we getting hard? Where are we getting hard?
I like this part of the track, made me move. Thank you.
I'll tell you what I know.
Unfortunately, I cannot see which part of the track it is with the stream latency. Like your message comes in maybe a minute after it plays on my end. So if I go back into the chat over here, down here, I wouldn't see where it appeared in the stream, I guess. Maybe on the YouTube side of the replay. Seems like I left here in a break and came back in another. Yes. Yes. I took 2 breaks this stream. Yeah, no timestamp for reference. I'll indicate the bar next time. Even that, I don't think it's going to matter too much, because, yeah, I guess that will work for a little bit. Yeah. No, that does work. Because technically the BPMs aren't aligned, maybe. Or maybe in this case, no, yeah, because the BPMs aren't aligned. This is different BPM. This isn't 140 BPM. But that doesn't matter. Even if you say like a bar line, then I would be able to see the general area, and then it would be okay. But it doesn't matter. It's not like how should I say? It's not like I use that. Like I go back into my Twitch chat or my YouTube chat to see what you guys are saying after the stream. I like to interact with you guys when you're here, when you're talking, but I don't go through my stream looking for feedback on the music that I'm producing or something like that. Like, it's nice when you guys give me compliments, it's nice when you guys give me critiques as well, because I can use that and I can learn from that, but I'd like to apply that in the moment that I'm actually producing, and not when I have a track that I am not currently working on and that I then have to go back into the YouTube live stream to look for the specific chat message to see what they're saying, and then to try to align it to the place where they said it, and then to do anything based on that. That's a little bit annoying. I wouldn't do that part. My PC is 12 years old and I can still use it to make music. Exactly. For me, the case and the hard disk and all of that stuff, and a lot of the peripherals around it as well, not only are like very old, I think some of the things over here are also 12 years old, maybe even older still. But a lot of the things that I've purchased aren't necessarily like top of the line either. You don't really need top of the line gear, or you don't really need up to date gear to make proper music. All that is really important is that you find the workflow that allows you to make proper music. And I can probably say that for me personally, I found a workflow that works for me. Like if you think that my music is professional and good sounding, then of course that would be an indication of that my workflow is working. I personally think that Mind B has found a workflow that is working really well for him. I really like the music that he is making. He does a lot of cool stuff. He's also pretty fast with making music, from what I can tell. So, yeah, if you have a 12-year-old PC, that doesn't mean that you cannot get into music. And also, like, it's not just like making music you need that good of gear, because specifically for psytrance you tend to need better gear because you need more plugins, because you need more sounds, because psytrance tracks tend to be more complex in the amount of sounds that you need. Like you can see over here, this is a half finished normal track of mine. This has almost 200 tracks, so that's like in this case 150 tracks, maybe 140 tracks that actually contain audio on them. And then some other groups that contain plugins as well on them, of course, and stuff like that. So there's a lot that is going to be playing in this. So there's a lot that is going to be playing in this project, like a lot of different plugins and stuff like that. So if you're making any other type of music, you're probably going to be using less plugins and less tracks to make your music. So I guess the advice that I'm giving, like with regards to gear and workflow and that kind of stuff and how much you need, if you're not making psytrance, the requirements are even lower, right? Because you need fewer sounds and therefore fewer PC resources. And even in here, just to give you an idea, this is already like a fairly big project for general purpose use of Ableton, right? I have a lot of very big plugins in here, mainly this bad boy over here that, as you can see, takes a while to open. But Omnisphere takes a lot of CPU. I probably have 30 instances of Omnisphere in this project, maybe even more. And idle, we're using 10% of the CPU. When playing, how much do we use? 30%. 30% maximum. So theoretically, I could double the amount of stuff that is in this project and still not have a problem. Not so fast. I think I have some inspirational phase where I make 1 or 2 tracks. After I have more technical phase where I try some stuff for like 1 month, and maybe after I have another creative phase. Okay. But I mean, still, you're pumping out more music than some of the other guys on the label. Just to be honest there. At least for now. Of course, some of the other guys are still working on stuff. And maybe it's not a fair comparison because not everybody does music full time. Also, I don't think Mind B does, but I do for sure. So I have more time to just spend on music. I don't know how like their workflow is and how fast they actually like produce versus how fast they put out music. But from what I could tell from the way that you were putting out music, you seem to work pretty fast in just getting to a track that you like, I guess, is the way to say it. I have a lot of tricks to save on CPU. One of the more used ones is recording to Edison and then deleting the VST or just replacing its patch and record more stuff. Yeah, that's interesting. So I don't. Maybe it is the system that I have that is just so good that I can get away with not having any tricks for it. I'm starting to get really itchy, by the way. I think you can tell, right? Um, but for me, I never really run into CPU issues. Like I cannot remember the last time where my CPU has disallowed me to open a VST. It would just not be able to handle it or something like that, or the whole project got slow and started cracking. I don't remember the last time that I did that. Maybe some exceptions of that is when I'm in sound design sessions where I'm doing like deliberately very intense stuff that I'm doing in a separate project so that I can then import it into other projects. Right? Like I did that one project where is it? In my samples, we have this jam session over here where I made this stuff. As you can imagine, all of that glitchy stuff, all of that very complex sound design in very long files, that tends to take up a lot of CPU. And there was the last time I remember hitting like 70-80% CPU usage. And then I just deleted a couple of tracks and started sound designing again for it. But that was when I had all 16 of the tracks in the project while I was working on them. And then once I had them exported to audio and stuff like that, it was okay again. I believe I wanted to do more here. More like another one shot in the middle, maybe. I think what might be cool is to go like this. And then also have a break in here. A longer break in here. And then doing a double kick here. Do I go like that, or do I go with this one, which is a little bit lower? Here, right? Yeah. This is a little bit lower in volume. That's usually better for the groove. I believe I have another spot where I would need to do that. I believe I had another spot where I doubled up on just the normal kick drums. Now I have to find it. Oh, here. There we are. Yeah. I probably want to have a normal double kick over here as well. Like, or when I say normal, the normal way that I do it, right? Which is on a separate track. Recording to Edison with different variants and then testing them to choose the best ones is a very good workflow for high-tech. Yeah, true. Recording is not just a CPU saving measure, right? It's also a creative measure in that you're committing to ideas, and especially if you're relying on random sound design ideas, right? With a lot of randomness in there, just generating a long file that you can then chop up and just take small parts out of and cut up in a way and work from there is a very good way to quickly generate a lot of... imagine the sounds are the paint that the painter uses. This way, what you're basically doing is you're generating a whole bunch of different paint that you can, or a whole bunch of different colors prior to that you start painting, and then you can put those colors on your painting, as opposed to mixing the paint while you're going, which is like the way that I sound design, where it's just in the project and it's just there, right? What you could do for some sounds is like I did over here, where you just render out a file. Stuff like this. right? And this goes on for a very long time. This is a couple of minutes long. And then you just cut out the parts that you find interesting. You say like, oh, I want this little extract of that sound over here. I want this little extract of that sound over there. You're basically just already taking the sound that you already have, the pain that you already have, and just putting it on the picture, putting it in the track, essentially. Yeah, it's good for chopping. It's good for that kind of workflow, the high-tech workflow. And that's also where I used it, because this is 180 BPM, as you can see over here. Never really worked on this track that was supposed to come out of it, but I made a couple of interesting videos out of it, and that's all that really matters nowadays for me. Or at least it's a big thing that matters for me. I think having just kick and bass over here for 3 bars and then having the atmosphere come in here. What might be cool is to have this atmosphere come in a little bit longer. Let's see what happens if we just actually make it longer or if we stretch it out. Seems like 56k modem sounds for those who know. Yeah, dial-up sounds, yeah. Yeah, I want this to fade in. I hope that the texture changes a little bit to a bit of a sharper texture here. I guess we get more emphasis on that higher harmonic there, which I like. And we'll just do it like this. Maybe even here we still don't have this thing, even though I like its interaction with this. I guess that can happen over here because it plays again. Yeah, over here it doesn't really sound good now that these plugs aren't there anymore. And the reason why I stopped them is because I don't like how the reverb in them cuts off all the way, right? We could maybe render out a version of this where the reverb doesn't stop like that. But even then, it does it for all of the other ones. Here the effect just gets covered up a little bit. I do like it as an effect in here though, that it just stops, right? But I guess here you can hear that we have stuff like this masking the effect. It gets a little bit more masked in it if it's in the parts of the track where a little bit more stuff is going on, so I don't think that we'll have the plug just in here on its own. One of your strengths projector, and I'm impressed by your atmospheres management in your track. I love it. Thank you. I guess it depends a little bit on what kind of atmospheres, if you mean like the delay and reverb atmosphere part or just the atmospheres over here. But whichever of the two you mean, I spend a lot of time working on both, so I do see where you're coming from, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you also never used to use snare rises in your tracks, right? Snare rises, from time to time, I like to have a snare in there. So this track has a snare. simple thing here. Actually, very simple snare rise here. It doesn't even rise in pitch. But this is, I would say, like every other track maybe has a snare roll in them. Maybe a bit more. There are certainly tracks that have no snare rolls, no snare risers like that in them for me. But I do sometimes like to use them. Yeah, reverb, delay, and also pads, atmospheric sounds, etc. Okay, yeah. The reverb and delay part, there's a video coming very soon about, I guess, my philosophy to applying them. One of the big things is that, as you can see, I don't work with return tracks. There's not a single return track. If I make one over here, you can see that we'll get return track A, meaning that it's the first. And the reason for that is I personally like to set up my reverbs and delays for each sound specifically. So that means that every sound has its own feedback, its own timing, its own filtering on the delay, its own dry wet on the delay, ping pong stereo, wider stereo with Echo Boy Jr. It has this wide mode, which I really like to use. But also the reverb, of course, is tuned to the sound that it goes on. And I think that's the main reason why I am good at setting up reverb and delay. It's because I have to just do it more often than people that just use return tracks. I also think people that use return tracks, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's no real proper way. Say that you have a return track, reverb, and a return track delay. If I were to take, where were we before? Here. If I were to take this delay and put it on here, and if I were to take this reverb and put it on here, and I just send return tracks to these things, it would be different than having them on here, because here the delay goes through the reverb. So the delay kind of gets reverbed out in a way. Whereas over here, the delay and the reverb run parallel to each other. So you're going to have a delay that doesn't really have any reverb on it. Meaning that you need to take this delay and apply the reverb to the delay if you want to have a reverb and delay combination. Right? You basically need to put these two tracks into one. Again. Where you have a delay and a reverb on that particular track. And there, I think there will be a much smaller chance that both the reverb and the delay will work well for a particular sound that you put into it. So you might end up either with a lot of different return tracks or just doing it my way, where you just put it in as an insert and just use it like that. Again, this is the kind of thing where I am not concerned about CPU usage, right? So for CPU usage, it is often advised that you put all of your reverbs and delays on return channels and you just send to it, because that uses the least amount of CPU. But for me, I don't really care about CPU. As you can see, even in a project that is getting close to finished, and in a project where I'm using a lot of different Omnisphere instances and a lot of heavy plugins, I'm getting 10% when idling and 30% when we were playing, like we saw before. So it doesn't really make sense for me to really hammer on CPU and therefore limit, I guess, my creative decisions that I can make by just having one reverb and one delay on a return track, as opposed to having a delay and a reverb for every sound that I tune specifically for the sound and that I do cool stuff with. Some of the stuff that I tend to do is stuff like this, where we have a dry wet that only goes up for a certain amount of time and that I immediately want to stop, for example. This is already harder to set up with return tracks. If you have multiple sounds going through the same return track, you cannot just turn off the reverb whenever you want. Because if you say, oh, I want this reverb to continue, but I want this one to stop, those cannot be on the same return track, right? Because then, if you send this to the return track and this at the same time, there's no way to just stop this part of the reverb, because the reverb is being generated by one reverb, and therefore all of the sounds are summed together before they go through the reverb. Quantum computer. Yeah, it's I don't even think it's such an egregious computer. Like the CPU as well. It's basic Ryzen 7, 8 core. Nothing super intense here. This isn't the kind of like decked out $1,000 CPU kind of thing. I believe I paid 260, 270 for the CPU at the time that I bought it, which is now 2 years ago. If this was my humble MacBook Pro, by that time Ableton would crash. Yeah, I get, like, laptops, I think, are a lot less powerful. I think when it comes to building or getting a PC for a studio environment, if you're actually, like, fully planning on just setting up a studio, always go for a desktop. So like a case that has that doesn't have its screen attached to it, and that doesn't have the keyboard on it and all of that stuff. If it already comes with all of that stuff, you're paying for that and the smaller form factor by having less performance, because they make components dedicated to mobile versions. So if you see a name of a CPU in your laptop, it usually has like an M behind it, meaning that it's the same hardware, but it's voltage much lower, so that it doesn't generate so much heat. But that also means that the performance is less. So if you're, I guess that's the only advice that I would give you CPU wise. If you can, try to get a desktop PC and work from there, because that is probably going to be more powerful for the price that you pay for it. In your opinion, operational system matters, or it's just a taste? The operating system, for me personally, I have always been a Windows user, because that is what we used to have back when I was a child, and we never, as a family, we were never really Apple people. Like, I don't think my family has ever owned an Apple product. I don't think my sisters ever owned an Apple product. I don't think my parents have ever owned an Apple product. So we were just always Windows. I guess at home, like PC wise, of course, Windows and Android on phone. And before that, there was other stuff, of course, when phones first came out. But taste-wise, I've always had I've just been used to Windows. That being said, there are some differences. From what I know, a lot of VSTs don't tend to work on Mac and Linux as well. Mac is, I believe, a Unix-based system as well. So if something should work on Linux, it should probably also work on Mac as a VST. I know Mac has its own format for plugins as well. I don't know if that means that VST is completely excluded as a format. Yeah, I tried making music Linux some years ago. It was interesting, but it was interesting to do. But then I switched to Windows because it was easier and VST compatible. Yeah, exactly. There's just, I guess, the main driver for an operating system is how many programs there are out there, and if you can fully implement the workflow that you would like to have with what is available on Linux or Mac, then that is probably okay. Then there's not going to, I don't think there's like big issues where you're going to have issues with audio drivers or stuff like that. In fact, I believe Mac's audio drivers are even better, technically speaking, in terms of like latency that you get for them versus the default Windows drivers, which tend to have a bit of latency in them. Of course, we have ASIO drivers when you were using audio interfaces, so even that doesn't realistically matter anymore. Yeah, there's just especially on Linux, there's a good chance that some of the tools that you want to use just aren't compatible with Linux, and there's even a chance for that on Mac. The chance is the smallest on Windows, then you have like Mac, and then you have Linux, where the chance is the highest that some tool that you want to use, some program that you want to use, some software or plugin or whatever it is that you want to use, just doesn't work with the operating system. But even then, you're probably going to be able to find workarounds for that and build up your own workflow dependent on your operating system. I don't think your operating system really matters. Like if you extract it out over learning a whole workflow. I think at the end of the day, if you're on Mac or if you're on Linux or if you're on Windows, if you build out your career well and you learn the things that you need to learn and you put in the time that you need to put in there, you're going to be able to make good music with whatever operating system that you have. Do you have plans on playing live? If yes, would you still take a Windows notebook? I do have plans on playing live, yes. I would love to have a couple of festivals or gigs to play next year. I'm still very much learning the ropes of DJing, and for now my DJ setup is actually on this desktop as well. I am going to transfer that over very, very soon to my laptop, so that I can also make sure that it works on the laptop there, now that I've found out how I can record just the audio of my mix. That way I can mix or make the mixes on my laptop, and that would also be then the setup that I would maybe like use at the gig or not. I don't know. It might also be the case that if I'm performing live, that I just end up using CDJs that are already provided for me. That is, to be honest, the thing that I'm the most scared of, is that I show up at the festival or at a club or whatever gig that I end up getting, and they say like, okay, here you go, please put in your USB stick into this controller that I have for you already set up, and start playing, and then I have no idea how to use that particular form of controller. I don't know. I'll have to see how that's going to work. But yeah, I would, if I had to use an operating system for that, I would probably get a Windows laptop for now at least. But I can 100% see myself getting a Mac purely for live performances and that kind of stuff. And the reason being is explained by Deadmau5 in a video where he talks about the Cube version 3, I think. Or maybe it's the Linus Tech Tip video where he has a house tour. He talks about his show and he explains in great detail how it runs. And then he shows like it runs on 2 Mac Pros, right? Which are the desktop version of the like MacBook thing. And the reason why they went for Apple is anywhere in the world you can run into an Apple store and you can buy a replacement computer for specifically the computer that you have, right? They can just take out the hard disk, put it into another computer, and if the CPU was fried or something like that, you have a new computer, you put the hard disk in, and it just continues working because it's all standardized. With Windows, you don't really have that. If you buy a new laptop, that new laptop may have a different motherboard, or that may have a different, I don't know, it may just be a completely different laptop. The laptop that you're trying to buy may no longer be available or something like that. And that can cause real problems if you're, say, touring and traveling and suddenly something goes wrong and you need a replacement right now. Almost anywhere in the world, you can walk into a like big tech store or whatever and probably get a replacement for the MacBook that you're working with, that you can then set up for live performance, and you're good to go in a few hours later maybe. With Windows, that is probably not the case because there's much more variance between the different systems that run Windows. I would love to have you here in Israel to play your stuff. I have a circle of private friends at nature parties I can hook you up with. It will be lovely. I have already had a guy say the same thing from Australia. So it would be amazing if I get to travel around the world and play in a couple of places like that. It's just that I guess this is anytime you get started with something. I don't really have the confidence yet. Like, I would probably be super nervous on a stage. And I know because I've played maybe 1 or 2 gigs in front of my friends, and I was nervous then. So imagine when there's when it's I don't know 500 people in the club, or maybe even more, like a festival like I went to now. Let's say that my second album performs really well, and Burning Mountain wants to invite me. I would be scared to death to play on that main stage. It's crazy how many people are there. You know what I mean? So I guess one of the best things that I would need to do is just get over that hurdle. And maybe a good thing to do is for me to find somebody that already has like a system like CDJs, you know, the stuff that is like standardized in clubs and stuff like that, so that I can just try my hands on like one of those standalone systems. Collective Intelligence is Australian, I think. No. Yes. I think he's Australian, yeah. It's like 100 to 200 people max for the parties I go to. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool offer. I would accept the offer, partially because I really would like to do it, but also because the nervousness that I feel now, like getting into doing gig work and playing parties and stuff, and all of that hassle, I guess it's not really for me. I'm not really the most social person, first of all, and second, I know that I would be very nervous up on that stage. I think all of that will go away at your 10th gig, maybe the 20th, maybe. I don't know, maybe for some people it will always stay, but I've heard a lot of people that say, yeah, the first few shows that you're doing, if you're DJing, you're going to be really nervous, and then at some point it's just going to feel the same as, or at least when you're like focusing on the DJing stuff itself, it's going to feel the same as just doing it in your living room. It's just that you have to get used to, for the first few times, a whole bunch of people staring back at you. Once you're through that, I think there wouldn't be a lot of nervousness or that kind of thing. You just need to bring your music, I guess. Yeah, I would need to have like a USB stick, but even that, I'm not entirely sure how it works, and I would need to learn Rekordbox. I would need to learn how to put stuff on the USB stick in the right way for, you know, the CDJs to actually work. And that is something that I still all have to figure out. Like, as I said, I'm just starting DJing. I know nothing about it, apart from, I guess, like the very basics of it. I've put some mixes online. For anybody that is actually interested in inviting me, there's always reference mixes that you can listen to see what I can do over on the Eclipse channel. Let me just go to the channel here. I have to record a new one soon because it's already July. But this one, and there's one more over here. There's 3 mixes up right now. Yes. 3 or 4? Oh no, there's 4. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4 mixes up right now. That is the thing that all of these are mixed by me. So if you like my way of mixing in these things, this is what I can do on the little console that I have now, on this thing. This is the current console that I use. So this is like one of those small things that needs a laptop and a controller, or like a software that you control with it. And ideally, at the end of the day, you would want to do it on like actual CDJs or something that is its own system, right? So that you can learn how to do it with the CDJs, I guess. Because that's going to be different. For example, right now, if I want to beat match, let's say that I want to beat match something. Let me go here to show you the example. So this is Tractor. This is the DJ software that I use. Say that I want to beat match 2 things. I just look at these lines, right? I say, okay, here I have a line. I want this line to line up with that line. Or even better, I want this little thing over here to line up with this little thing over here. I can already set that up prior to actually DJing or playing in the mix, and then I can start to align things. I've been trying to do it with my eyes closed, just trying to do it by ear, but that doesn't go great yet. Yeah, there's still stuff to learn, still stuff for me to improve on, to become more confident in, and I hope that actually getting some gigs for 2025 will put the pressure more on me for me to focus on it more. There's a channel called Digital DJ Tips. They do music. They do courses, but also Q&A streams. Digital DJ Tips. They also have a website, apparently. But they have a YouTube channel as well. Yeah, what I would ideally find is maybe somebody that just explains the CDJs for me. And that whole environment, maybe. So that way I can hopefully just show up at the place and start playing there. You know what I mean? Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't most party organizers and stuff like that provide you with the gear? Like, I imagine the people that show up at Burning Mountain to DJ. For one, there was like maybe 30 seconds between sets in terms of a pause, which was really cool, by the way. They do it really well. But I always assume that that's just because what they'll do is they'll have one DJ play on the gear that is out there, which is theirs, and they just put their USB sticks in there, and they play their song, and once they're on their final song, they just pull out all of the other USB sticks so that the next DJ can already put their music and prepare their music there, and they can put it in, and then once they're the last song like actually finishes and they finalize the transition, it just goes to the next DJ and then they play with the same gear. Yeah, we would provide you with the gear. Yeah, exactly. I would need to then figure out how that specific part of gear actually works. Or I would need to bring my own gear, which would be a different story if I would try to take that on a plane or something like that. I love you have a craft studio just like me. I do indeed have a craft studio, yes. Yes, but if you are a big name, you get what's called a DJ rider, which is a list of demands. Aha. I do, yeah. I think I've heard of that when they have either the effect decks or when the what's his called, the guy, the Scottish guy that does like very James Hype, isn't he Scottish? I don't know, doesn't matter. But at least James Hype, he has like 4 CDJs in front of him at all times, and then a pad lounge thing, or a lounge, Akai beat lounge, whatever it's called. The 16 pads that you're using to launch events and stuff like that. And then he has the thing that is, you know, when they have the mixer, the Pioneer mixer, which is its own thing, and then they have that extra little box on top, which is like for effects and stuff, like extra effects, where you have like 2 circles and a whole bunch of buttons around it. Maybe I can find that as well. Pioneer DJ full setup. Images. Let's see if I can find what I mean. This thing. The remix station thing. This thing over here. Like, I imagine that it's just in his list of requirements. Like, if I'm going to play here, I want the 4 players. I want this kind of mixer. I want this remix station. I want that little beat thing that he uses to play the whatever he does with that. I don't know if he launches events or clips or like actual sounds with that. He did a video this week showing how to use the 4 decks and the pad controller together. Ah, okay. Interesting. But yeah, that's what I mean. I assume that once you're like a big name like that, you can just demand, hey, give me this gear, and otherwise I won't show up. But I don't know if I'm yet at that level. They're going to ask and like, okay, why would we need to listen to your DJ rider? I'm going to say, well, I have 27,000 views on one of my mixes. How you have such advanced living contracts? I don't know what you mean about that. James demands the older CDJ 2000 because the new 3000s that other use are too unresponsive for him. Yeah, exactly. They get to make the demands. I don't think I'm in the position yet where I actually get to make demands about the gear that I would like to use and whatnot. Most times I've seen someone doing a review on the console for the hosted DJ before he goes live. Okay. To be honest, I think I would be the most comfortable if I just learn how to use the CDJs. And I think the best way to do that is to find somebody in town that has them, or has access to them, or knows a guy that works in a club or something like that. And then through there, try to see if I can either just train on them, or maybe even get a gig where I have to play on them. And that way, you'll actually learn. But that is something that I want to focus on after I move. Like the actually getting hands-on experiences and getting gigs and all of that stuff. I have to, not really have to, but I want to wait until the stress of moving to a different apartment is over. And then the end of September, I'm going to start looking into that. You can hire them. Yeah, true. I of course that if I ask somebody like, hey, can I use your club system for an afternoon to train my DJ skills, I assume that I would need to pay for that service. Right? You cannot just expect somebody to open up their doors for that kind of thing. There might even be DJ stores out, not here, but in Milan, that might be able to do it. And even there, they probably have like a rate or something like that for you to practice, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. There's probably plenty of options. If anybody is keen on helping me out or something like that, you always know where to contact me. And I do indeed hope, yeah, Projector 2025 is going to be the year that I maybe play a couple of gigs. That would be really cool if it really came to that. But for now, I'll have to work on the... or by Pioneer CI Y roll. You mean like just a Pioneer controller? I mean, the controller that I have is already Pioneer. It's just a very old one. I would, yeah, there are those controllers that have their own system built in, right? This kind of stuff, I guess. Yeah, but this is $1,000. I cannot spend that. At least not now. Yeah, but this is the one that has like an internal full system. right? That's what I would like to learn with, as opposed to something like this, which is still attached to a laptop. Because I think that's where the difference is when it comes to learning DJing. At least that's what I assume. That there must be a difference between doing stuff like beat matching and syncing and all of the other things that you tend to do on a DJ set. There should probably be a difference between a controller that is attached to a laptop versus a controller that is just like purely standalone, right? Either this thing or the actual CDJ setup, right? Like something like this must be different in the way that you handle it than, or maybe not. Maybe you can even connect the laptop to it. Apparently, I guess. I don't know how that would work. But yeah, I always assume that this would be like fundamentally different to DJing on just a normal controller because I guess for me, as I said, it's like the lining up of things, the beat matching is like different because I beat match a lot by eye still, as I said before. But maybe even that is I'm overthinking it. I don't know. As I said, this is something that I'm almost completely unfamiliar with, so I would have to find that out. If you have a Pioneer, the sliders will be in the right place. That is good to know. At least that is where... at least that is like in the right spot. Okay. I think that's going to be it for today in terms of my stream. I've done a nice 4 hours. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the process that we made. I'm happy with all of the interesting chats that we had. I hope that I can do another stream, maybe Friday, and then the feedback stream again on Sunday. But I'll have to see, depending a little bit on how it goes in terms of what I all have to do. I'm not super busy right now, but I'm going to be busy again in a month or so. That is when I have a week where I leave again, so I need to make content in advance for that. I want to have another sale in the summer, so I would ideally have a few products ready for then. And then after that, I'm moving to a different apartment, so then I have very little time to actually make content. Anyway, that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hopefully see you again in the next one, which should hopefully be before Sunday again. Bye bye. See you guys.